All right, welcome back to Sunrise Daily. We'll continue our focus on well, this ongoing development concerning the CJN without delving into the matters exactly before the courts came. But you were talking about the question of jurisdiction.
Does the CCT have that jurisdiction to hear this case? Because clearly some have argued and believe that it doesn't.
Well, the Nigerian Constitution is very clear about the jurisdiction of the CCT. And, you know, this case falls within the jurisdiction of the CCT, if you ask me. But I think we should wait for the CCT or a higher court to rule on that. But based on our understanding of the Constitution, it is very clear that these alleged violations of the law falls within the purview of the jurisdiction of the CCT. That is why it's being arraigned before the CCT and not before any other court.
What do you think of the ruling yesterday that stopped the...
Well, as a Democrat and somebody who believes in law and order, I think the ruling by the court is very, very appropriate, because no matter our grievances, no matter how we feel about issues, I think that at every point in time we should employ civilized means of resolving disputes. And that is why, for some of us, instead of people saying, oh, don't go there, it's because he's a Christian, it's because he's from socio-ethnic stock, rather, let us all submit ourselves to the law. This is the law officer of the country.
What if people are calling it as they see it?
Pardon?
What if people are calling it as they see it?
Well, I think it is very, very important for us to realize that, you know, as people, if we want to hold our own eye in the Committee of Nations, we are not an island. The way we conduct our affairs will be the way people will mirror us. So it is important for us, you know, to always conduct ourselves and make our utterances in line, you know, with, you know, every sense of responsibility. So the fact that you have a right to freedom of speech does not mean you know you should assault, you know, the collective sensibilities of Nigerians. So for people like us, we are worried when people want to, you know, assault or intimidate institutions of state. As we speak here, the CJN...
But that's what they're accusing the federal government of doing right now.
No, yes, that's what some people are accusing. But you and I know very well that the CCT is not part of the executive arm of government. Rather, the CCT is also not sitting in the presidency. The CCT is not a creation of Mr. President. The CCT is a creation of the Nigerian Constitution, just like the courts. So what we are saying here is that at every point in time, Nigerians, we need to enjoy ourselves. No matter how angry we are about the system, that we should, you know, submit ourselves to the law. That is the only way we can, you know, prosper as a people.
Okay, I'd like to go back to Mr. Offiong. There's this interesting angle that you brought into the conversations that we've been having. The offense or the allegation against the CJN, is it a function? I asked that question the other time, but would you? And you said the other time that it's first of all in the framing of the allegation against the CJN. You alluded to the fact that it's because he's been the allegation is because he hasn't made the declaration after he became the Chief Justice of Nigeria. Would it have been okay not to charge him or not to bring this case up if he was not CJN? Would it have been okay for him not to declare his assets if he wasn't CJN within the stipulated time that it ought to have been done?
Sorry, I lost a part of what you said. So it's
okay. I was asked you referred the other time that the allegation.
I got you up to the point where you said would it have been okay, but I lost.
So would it have been okay not to charge him, not to bring this case up if he was not CJN, or would it have been okay not to bring this allegation of this discovery up of him not declaring his assets according to law if he wasn't CJN? Wouldn't it have been okay not to bring it up or to bring it up? Because your issue was in the framing of the allegation.
Okay, I get you now. Okay, I get you now. Okay. I don't know whether my friend Nelson is a lawyer. It's a little frustrating for me speaking with the background and information that I have as a lawyer, and then hearing some of the comments being made, I think the first thing to say is that when people talk about jurisdiction, they don't, outside of lawyers, perhaps they don't understand what the scope of the expression jurisdiction is. When we speak on jurisdiction as lawyers, and the courts have articulated that, there are a number of components. Number one, a court could lack jurisdiction because the persons who constitute the officials of that court are not qualified, or they are not in the number that they should be. So that's one part of it. So jurisdiction could go to the qualification of the members of the court. The jurisdiction could also go to the question of the subject matter. Is the matter being agitated a matter within the subject matter, within what is donated to the body that is trying the matter? Sometimes the subject matter could even be within the competence of that body, but it occurs in a territorial area which is outside the control of that body. Again, that's an issue of jurisdiction. The last one is when you bring a matter before the tribunal, the subject matter may be within the competence of the tribunal, the members may be qualified, but there are certain preconditions that have to be met before the matter is brought before that tribunal. Again, that speaks to the question of jurisdiction. So when we say that the CCT has no jurisdiction, it is not subject matter jurisdiction. It is not member qualification jurisdiction. It is this, that there are preconditions laid down by law, as pronounced by the Court of Appeal, which show that before you bring a matter concerning a judicial officer to the CCT, it has to clear from the NJC. You may agree with it, you may not agree with it, but that's the law. Now, the second thing to be said is this. The CCT itself has recognized this. A Supreme Court judge has been taken before the CCT, Honorable Justice Nguta. This same objection was raised, that the matter had not been cleared from, and the CCT itself recognized that and struck out the case. So everybody ought to know that the CCT itself has tended to comply with that law. Now, but there's a bigger picture which we need to address here, arising from your question. It is this. A justice of the Supreme Court, a president, every other person is a citizen before they occupy them. So the responsibility of every citizen, even office holders, is to obey the law. And the rule of law, the statement of the rule of law is that the law treats everyone equally. So except for persons who have immunity, during the period that they occupy their office, no one should be exempted from being held accountable to the law. Now, the next issue is the process of holding people accountable to the law. If there are rules put in place that you must comply with in the process of wanting, so that's what is called the due process argument. In the process of wanting to hold those people, that is also the law. Failure to comply with it is wrong. And this is the interesting thing. In our democracy, and that's a big picture here, that's a real struggle, that's the real soul of this conversation. Long ago, it was recognized that our democracy can only thrive when you have separation of powers. And Montesquieu, who formulated that principle of separation of powers, clearly recognized that the most potent threat to the liberty and which leads to dictatorship was the threat of the executive usurping all the functions of government, the legislature and the judiciary, and embodying it in itself. That would lead to oppressiveness. And therefore, it was contended that it should be separated. That political theory found expression in our constitutional arrangement. We separated the functions. Now, I am concerned, as a lawyer, the citizen, that what seems to have played out in the last 5 years, or in the last 3 years, is that you have seen the executive targeting the head of the legislature and more or less wanting to have a surrogate in charge of the legislature. That subverts this principle of separation of powers.